The Trump administration appears to be making the legal case for a war with Iran. The administration's latest knock on the government in Tehran is apparently that they are backing high-level al-Qaeda operatives. Now, this would be quite the story if it were true, considering that Iran is a Shiite Islamic theocracy, and that al-Qaeda is a Sunni Wahhabist terrorist organization. Now, in case anyone listening here is not familiar with theocracies, they typically do not back groups who are of a different religious sect. The whole idea of a theocracy is that they tend to promote their own religion, not somebody else's. Unfortunately, it would seem that the U.S. intelligence community hasn't learned their lesson from the Iraq War, which was, of course, that not all Muslims are the same. Just like in Christianity, there are different interpretations of the Quran and different denominations of Islam. Now, let's give it the benefit of the doubt to the administration, though, that they do understand this difference and that perhaps they're only making this very, very weak case so that they can try and lump in Iran under the 2001 authorization of use of military force, which was, of course, passed against al-Qaeda. After 9/11, the 2001 AUMF was passed pretty easily through Congress, and since then, the Bush, Obama, and now Trump administrations have been using it to, wage war against al-Qaeda, and then eventually the interpretation was expanded to include really anyone affiliated with al-Qaeda in any sense, not just al-Qaeda itself. Now, of course, Congress did not pass a law expanding the 2001 AUMF. It's just sort of been taken to mean more than just al-Qaeda. So because of that, no administration really has had to go back to Congress to authorize any of its war-making over the last, 18 years? Essentially, in passing the 2001 AUMF, the Congress gave up all war-making power that they had left. And the president had already seized quite a bit of that. But it seems that at this point that Congress has zero power when it comes to war. And that's because by tying al-Qaeda to Iran, what the president is essentially able to do is legalize a war with Iran without congressional approval. Because the idea is that Congress already approved a war against al-Qaeda and then implicitly al-Qaeda-linked groups, and if they link Iran to al-Qaeda, well, then we can go to war with Iran. Now, it's no surprise that the administration would be pursuing the legal case for a war with Iran, considering the sort of folks who populate it, namely John Bolton and Mike Pompeo. Mike Pompeo, when he was in the House, was a pretty reliable Republican, always seen as a strong hawk, pretty well liked on the right in America. John Bolton, likewise, a Bush administration alumni and veteran of the, I believe, Maryland National Guard during the Vietnam War, someone who, of course, likes to start wars but doesn't like to fight in them. All these men have for years wanted to take out the regime in Iran. It has been really public enemy number one for right of center America. If you ever listen to AM talk radio, you know that if you listen for at least a week, you'd hear at least an hour of content denouncing Iran as the most evil country on earth and so powerful and mighty and needs to be stopped, which of course is utter nonsense. I mean, Iran is not exactly does not exactly even have the most well-equipped military in the Middle East. I mean, I think it's been pretty clear throughout the Syrian civil war that Israeli troops are much better trained and equipped than the Iranians. Iran also doesn't have exactly the most powerful economy. I mean, it's okay. It's certainly not the worst. It's doing better than most of the Arab countries, certainly, but I mean, I think the Persians would consider that to be a baseline. I don't think any self-respecting Persian would tolerate living in a country that's poorer than one of the Arab tin pot states. The only reason I've ever been able to find for why that makes sense as to why the American right is so obsessed with Iran is that Iran really is the only country in the Middle East that doesn't pay homage to the U.S. If you look at a map of U.S. military bases in the Middle East, there are red dots sprinkled all around everywhere except for Iran. There are bases in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Jordan, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, Turkey, all over the place, but there are none in Iran. And Iran's a very big place. It would seem to me that the only thing that would make sense is that the military wants an allied government in Tehran so that they can have quite a few bases across Iran. If Iran was some tiny country like, Bahrain, which I believe is also run by has a Shia prince or emir, then perhaps the U.S. wouldn't care that much because they have a base right next to them in Qatar and all over Saudi Arabia. But considering that Iran is so big, I don't think that the U.S. feels comfortable leaving a size of the earth that wide with no U.S. military bases. So I'll try and monitor this and see if anything comes of it. So stay tuned, and please subscribe if you find this video at all enlightening. I'm going to try and keep up daily videos on various contents, the economy, U.S. politics, and of course the wars, the very many wars that are undercovered by our awful mainstream media. So please do like and subscribe, and leave me a comment with your thoughts if you have any, and I'll see you in the next one.